The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
We said we would end the chaos, and we will. We said we would turn the page, and we have. Today we start the next chapter. Begin the work of change, the mission of national renewal, and start to rebuild our country.
A very warm welcome to our special coverage of the UK general election. As you'd expect, we're live in London from Westminster, Downing Street and the City, checking on the financial markets with insight and analysis all morning. These are your headlines. So, as expected, Sir Keir Starmer is about to become the next Prime Minister, preparing to enter Downing Street with his Labour Party securing a landslide. They're on track for the largest majority for any party since 1997.
The Conservative Party slumps, losing 218 seats so far, on track for the lowest total in its history.
The British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight. There is much to learn and reflect on, and I take responsibility for the loss.
The Liberal Democrats gain seats then in former safe Conservative territory, on track for their biggest gain since 1923. While at the same time, Nigel Farage's populist Reform UK, well, they win 15% of the national vote.
Something very fundamental is happening. It's not just disappointment with the Conservative Party. There is a massive gap on the centre-right of British politics, and my job is to fill it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Sterling trades cautiously and FTSE futures nudge higher as investors take stock of what a new Labour government could mean for financial markets.
Well, quite an extraordinary meteoric shift in UK politics. I've got to say, a lot of it was pretty much as expected. Were the Tory losses quite as bad as many predicted? Maybe not quite as bad, but there's still a way to go, and the Conservatives only just around about 100 seats at the moment. So, as expected, Sir Keir Starmer will become the UK's next Prime Minister, walking through the famous door of number 10 Downing Street later this morning. The speed with which we do things in this country is extraordinary. Don't forget, if you win an election in the United States, you have to wait months until you take the keys to the White House. Here, the removal van is probably already at Downing Street, or certainly the boxes are packed. Anyway, Labour Party has secured a landslide win after 14 years of Conservative rule. The first part of that, of course, was a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. That seems a long time ago now. Do you remember the Rose Garden with Nick Clegg and the former Prime Minister as well? Anyway, Starmer's Labour Party has won 392 seats so far, well above the 326 needed to secure a majority in Parliament, with Labour on track for the largest majority for any party in 27 years. What was 27 years ago? Of course, it was the new Labour Tony Blair years as well, as where he stormed to power. Let's listen in to Keir Starmer.
A mandate like this comes with a great responsibility. Our task is nothing less than renewing the ideas that hold this country together. National renewal. Whoever you are, wherever you started in life, if you work hard, if you play by the rules, this country should give you a fair chance to get on. It should always respect your contribution, and we have to restore that.
The night delivered a historic defeat for the right-wing Conservative Party, which has lost 221 seats so far, now standing at just 99. That leaves the party set to record the lowest seat total in its history. Conservative Party leader and outgoing Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he takes responsibility for the crushing defeat.
The Labour Party has won this general election, and I have called Sir Keir Starmer to congratulate him on his victory. Today, power will change hands in a peaceful and orderly manner, with goodwill on all sides. That is something that should give us all confidence in our country's stability and future. The British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight. There is much to learn and reflect on, and I take responsibility for the loss. To the many good, hard-working Conservative candidates who lost tonight, despite their tireless efforts, their local records of delivery, and their dedication to their communities, I am sorry.
Rishi Sunak speaking earlier today as he spoke to supporters, talking about what a difficult night it has been. And of course, we're hearing a lot already about just what type of victory Labour is looking at, Steve. Comparisons to 1997, to when Blair swept to power with that supermajority. It may be just shy, according to some of the early polling, not quite the numbers that we saw back then in 1997, but we have had a big swing away from the Conservatives. You mentioned not as big as it could have been, but that said, smaller parties still picking up a lot of the vote, and that was fascinating. Keir Starmer also spoke about this to an extent in his speech. He's talking about with a mandate like this comes great responsibility. So still talking about the challenge from here. The fight for trust is the battle that defines our age. I think the fact that reform also got a foothold in this election shows you that there's support for the hard right, even in this country, despite the domination that we've seen by the Labour Party, Steve.
Yeah, a lot of what you say is absolutely spot on, Karen, as well. I mean, let's just go through it region by region. We'll start at the top of the country. A collapse, even perhaps more so than the Conservative collapse, of the SNP in Scotland. Why was there a collapse in Scotland? Well, it wasn't because of a lack of ardour for independence. That's still pretty much there. But it's, as my next guest has been telling me off camera, that issue of independence has gone down the agenda. It's about competence in government. And I think if we go south of the border as well, that is exactly the reason why the Conservatives have had such a bad night. The doorsteps, pollsters, the viewers, everyone's been saying, look, it's about basic economic competence. It's about competence about running the government. They didn't like Partygate during COVID. They didn't like the Truss and Kwarteng budget. And so after 14 years, very few governments can get back in again if indeed they've lost the trust economically and the competence-wise of the country as well. You mentioned reform, very interesting that Nigel Farage's party looks like it's picking up sub to the 13 that some people expected them to get. As we can see on the screen now, plus 4 seats there, including Richard Tyson. Of course, Nigel Farage, 8th time I think it is that he's tried to become an MP, succeeding in Clacton as well. Very low turnout. Very interesting that the share of the vote for the Conservatives and Labour is down. The overall turnout is comparable to what we saw, again, according to my next guest, to what we saw in 2001. So a lack of passion perhaps for the major two parties, but as you say, splits across the board. Good night for the Liberal Democrats as well. The last time I looked, they were on 59 seats, which is plus 52 from their previous showing.
Steve, a couple of papers here this morning to show our viewers internationally. Britain sees red, this in the Sun. So you can see the colour of the night, the domination of Labour. Exit polls put Labour on course for landslide, this in the Times. So very early on, you can see scrambling at the presses trying to get these papers out. We're not far off Fleet Street here on Fleet Place. So we are right on the cusp, as you can see, of those press newspapers being pushed out very quickly to determine the verdict. But just a couple of points there, Steve, around what happens now for the Tories as well. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor seemingly holding on to their seats, but elsewhere, I think a lot of soul searching from here. We heard from Suella Braverman early on as she declared victory in her seat, but apologising to voters, saying the party had let them down and that acted as though they were entitled to their vote. So what happens from here for the Tory party will be very, very interesting, Steve.
Thanks very much indeed for that, Karen. Let's get to our next guest, our first guest of the show. Kieran Pedley is Director of Politics at Ipsos. So, after a whole series of Conservative parties, starting off with that coalition with David Cameron in 2010, it is the end of 14 years of Conservative rule. What do you make of it? Open question.
So I think we know from the opinion polls running into this general election that the Conservatives were significantly behind, that it looked like Boris Johnson's 2019 voting coalition was essentially imploding in several different directions, if that's possible. But to see it in real time is still very striking. What we're looking at is something in the region of a 20-point drop in the Conservative vote share in 4.5 years. And the catalyst for that appears to be the growth of Reform UK, winning 4 seats, a bit less than what we thought at the start of the night, where we thought we might get 13. There's still a significant number of seats. Nigel Farage finally in Parliament. But what's more significant is the votes that they've taken off the Conservatives throughout the country, because what it seems like is that the Labour vote share nationally has only increased very modestly by a few points, but it's Reform taking those votes off the Conservatives that's allowed them to win such a significant landslide.
What happens next? We'll start off with the opposition and we'll get to the Labour government as well. What happens next with the centre-right stroke right side of British politics as well? Nigel Farage talking about this as being a launch pad. Straight away he said in his acceptance speech down in Clacton, a launch pad for 2029. It's fascinating to see which way the main opposition, they will still just about be the main opposition at the moment. They've got 99 seats at the moment, down 220. We haven't quite got over the 100 mark yet, with 62 to go as well. What happens to the right side of British politics, to the whole Brexit debate as well?
Well, I think that's the open question. I mean, we see that people like Suella Braverman, who will still be in Parliament, seem to be much more open to finding an accommodation with Nigel Farage. What that would look like in practice remains to be seen. But there are others in the Conservative Party that are, hell-bent on preventing Nigel Farage from being part of whatever comes next. So fundamentally, that is going to be part of the next Tory leadership debate whenever it kicks off. Of course, Penny Mordaunt won't be part of that. She lost her seat. So again, it remains to be seen what's left of the Conservative Party and what they do from here.
Well, Jeremy Hunt scraped over the line as well after a vicious campaign in Surrey. In fact, he worked so hard at the local scene. It was very interesting to note as well. So, Penny Mordaunt, Grant Shapps, Alex Chalk, Gillian Keegan amongst the ministers losing their seats. Jacob Reed-Mogg lost his seat as well. Very interesting there. But in terms of the government now and the Labour government, how safe is Sir Keir Starmer from an assault from the left as well? I think a lot of our viewers looked at the Jeremy Corbyn years as well, and Jeremy Corbyn, who's got in as an independent, he's lost the Labour whip. I heard John McDonnell saying he wants him to get the whip back, not become an independent, become back onto the Labour benches as well. How safe is Sir Keir Starmer over the next 2 or 3 years with this enormous majority?
I think it's pretty safe. Look, I think there's two things I would say. The first is that in terms of the parliamentary selections, I think the candidates that the Labour Party have chosen to be part of this new majority, there has been quite the concerted effort, it would appear, to prevent leftist candidates from running, or to, the word purge is used.
So there's no secret momentum underbelly going on, just for our viewers who are worried about that kind of thing?
No, I mean, I think that there's been a lot of effort from the Labour Party, the Labour leadership, to choose candidates that are in sort of Keir Starmer's image. There's been a highly disciplined, attempt to do that. I mean, politically, where the risk comes from the left is external to the Labour Party, I think, and potentially losing votes to, let's say, the Greens or to other candidates, which we've seen overnight. It's not a big story of the election because Labour have won so big, but the Greens have increased their vote share significantly, Independents have increased their vote share significantly. So it will be what impact that has externally on the Labour Party that might have an impact.
I've got a list of dozens of commitments and a few sketches on policy from Labour, of course, ruling out certain kinds of taxes, being vague on others, such as capital gains and what have you as well. Definitely trying to push forward with the loss of the exemption of VAT on school fees, but no income tax hikes, no national insurance hikes, no VAT hikes as well. Do we know enough about the details of Labour policy at this stage to say how they're going to tackle some of the big issues of our age?
Well, I think one of the things we know from public opinion is that around half of the public have gone into this election saying they're not clear what Keir Starmer stands for. So in many ways it is a bit of a blank canvas, but then that's probably part of the reason why Labour have won this election, because they've made it a referendum on the Conservative Party and their record in 14 years rather than a referendum on the incoming opposition. What we know from the last 4.5 years that we've seen is that if you don't deliver on the priorities of the voters that have put you there, then your voting coalition can unravel very, very quickly. It used to be, the idea was that, well, if you win big, you might get not just one term, you might get two to really set your agenda. I think those days are gone. We've seen things turn around very quickly this Parliament. So what does that mean in practice? It means that Labour have to deliver on the NHS, on public services, on the cost of living, on housing and poverty, and the things that matter to the people that have voted for them to put them there. Because if they don't, we know that voters are volatile and they might fracture in different directions in the same way.
It's very interesting. Something I noticed in 1997 is that Gordon Brown was all about prudence for the first couple of years. And then as things went on, after about 2 or 3 years, the taps got turned on, that fiscal prudence went by the wayside as well. This time round, Rachel Reeves has promised similar to what Gordon Brown promised in 1997 as well. How soon before that Labour actually go down a similar route actually and start spending, or will the fiscal constraints prevent them from doing so?
Well, they've said the fiscal constraints will prevent them from doing so. We'll have to wait and see is the short answer. But there is risk in not being seen to deliver a pace of change quickly enough on things like public services. A common thing we find in focus groups when we talk to voters up and down the country is that nothing works. And this has been, the country's going in the wrong direction, trains don't run on time, I can't get a GP appointment, this sort of thing. And those are the issues that the voters want to see fixed. Now, that's not just about money, of course, that's part of the conversation.
How did Ipsos get on? Was it a good night for the pollsters? I mean, they've got better over the year. I mean, obviously the pollsters took a bruising on Trump and Brexit on both sides of the Atlantic. You've had a better run of form since then. Was it a good night for Ipsos?
It was a solid night, yeah. I mean, we understated the Conservatives a little bit, but the bigger picture of looking at a sort of solid Labour, landslide Labour majority was what happened, so that's what we called, so we're pleased with that. And I think, some of the vote shares, such as Reform in the mid-teens, we had that as well, and Labour sort of in the mid to high 30s. So it was a good night for us, the right result, so we'll take that and move on.
How many hours sleep have you had in the last 48 hours?
Not many. I'm a numbers guy, but it's a fairly small number, I've got to say.
Kieran, I know you got a whole round of interviews this morning. Thank you so much. I can tell you now the Tories have got to 101. What did you think the Tories would get?
I thought 140, but that's looking high at the moment with the amount of seats left, I think.
101 I've got here on the BBC with 57 still to go. Kieran, get some sleep. And thank you very much for joining us this morning. At least we get moderately dry despite the torrent that's happening. Now, OK, that's Kieran Pedley, Director of Politics over at Ipsos. There's a lot going on various forms of multimedia at CNBC this morning. For more of the action overnight, as well as today's comings and goings. There's a lot of comings and goings. Please check out our election live blog. That is on cnbc.com. A host of guests as well, Karen.
Yeah, it's certainly been a busy night and we've got a busy morning ahead. We're going to be getting reaction to those results from a slew of top analysts throughout the morning. At 7 a.m. London time, we'll hear from Goldman Sachs Chief European Economist Yari Stein before UBS Investment Bank's Banu Baweja joins us at the market open. Former MI6 boss Richard Dearlove will join us at 8:30 CET, that is London time rather. Also hear from the former BOE Deputy Governor John Geeve and Chatham House CEO Bronwyn Maddox. But first, let's head out to Arabile on Downing Street. Arabile, a lot of the action so far has been at various different seats around the country, but the cameras will swing your way later today.
Yeah, look, Karen, one thing is for sure then, right? Come rain or shine, there will be a change at number 10 Downing Street. And we will await that then, of course, as the bruising numbers tally up and Rishi Sunak concedes defeat and ultimately responsibility for this bruising defeat for the Conservatives.
Listen to CNBC's Beyond the Valley, the podcast that explores the biggest tech news from across the globe. Join me, Arjun Karpal.
And me, Tom Chitty, every week as we bring you insights into the top stories, unpack the latest trends, and find out where the industry is headed.
Now available on Spotify, Apple Music, and Google Podcasts.
What do you do with your sleep patterns on election night? That's the question. Do you stay up late or do you just go to bed early and then get up early? I chose the latter anyway, but it's going to be a long morning. Right, so huge news north of the border actually as well. We talked a little bit about one of our previous guests from Ipsos. The Scottish National Party, SNP, has lost its status as the UK's third party. And that matters actually, because even during Prime Minister's questions time, it means that the leader of the SNP would very often get the third question after Labour had their go, and that will probably go to Ed Davey now. So UK's third party was SNP. It's now going to be the Liberal Democrats, we think. They're currently holding up in Scotland just 7 seats. That is down 38 as Labour regains its dominance in the country. Moving on, looking at the Liberal Democrats, they have so far secured, and we're just looking now, 64 seats, making inroads in traditional Conservative heartlands. Now that is up on 57 in 2019 and leaves the party on track for its largest seat gain, up 57 on 2019, largest seat gain since 1923. The leader, Ed Davey, well, he's been all over the country. What's he been doing? Is he paragliding? I think he did about that. He certainly was paddleboarding, doing all kinds of bungee jumping. Ed Davey said the party wants to be the champion of its voters.
Now, I don't know if you could tell, but I've rather enjoyed this campaign. But what I've loved most hasn't been the paddleboarding or the bungee jumping. It's been speaking to people here in Kingston and Surbiton and across the United Kingdom about the challenges they face and their hopes for the future. Many of them have turned to the Liberal Democrats, in some cases for the first time at this election, and we want to be your champions. We've listened to you, and we've heard you loud and clear.
Do you know, we're over 8 years from the UK Brexit vote of June 2016, but it's still, I tell you what, if you think it is or not, it's still overhanging a part of British politics as well. The Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, has now secured a parliamentary seat. That's his 8th time of trying. What does it mean for the Conservative Party? Potentially a lot, because of course it split the Tory vote, which means of course that although they didn't get quite the number of seats they wanted, the Reform Party, and we'll come to that in a moment, the fact of the matter is it took a lot of vote away from the Conservatives, which again dented their number of seats that they could hopefully get. Now Farage won comfortably in Clacton, which is down in the southeast of this country, on a night which has seen his Reform UK Party secure more than 14% of the national vote, and 4 seats so far.
Something very fundamental is happening. It's not just disappointment with the Conservative Party. There is a massive gap on the centre-right of British politics, and my job is to fill it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. There's no enthusiasm for Labour. There's no enthusiasm for Starmer whatsoever. In fact, about half of the vote is simply an anti-Conservative vote. This Labour government will be in trouble very, very quickly. We will now be targeting Labour votes. We're coming for Labour, be in no doubt about that.
Well, we've already heard from him in his constituency up in the north of England, but we're going to hear from the outgoing Prime Minister Rishi Sunak this morning outside of Downing Street. The problem for poor Rishi Sunak is he's absolutely belting it down here again. And if you recall when he called the general election a few weeks ago, it was bucketing down there, and that was the start of what was a disastrous campaign. But anyway, we'll hear from him down the street. That's before he heads to Buckingham Palace, where he formally offers his resignation to King Charles. Then Sir Keir Starmer will make his own trip to the palace before his first address to the nation. Reports suggest we could see the bulk of appointments to Labour's cabinet by the end of today. But one person who won't be in it is John Ashworth, of course, who lost his seat in the Midlands of this country. But Arabile is manfully amongst the throng that is Downing Street, and it looks like you're standing on your own, Arabile, but I know from many experiences you are amongst dozens, if not over 100 journalists there. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, it certainly feels like hundreds, doesn't it, Steve? Look, we're among the throngs. It's been 42 days since you made note of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak having stood just outside 10 Downing Street, of course, and made that fateful decision then to have this summer election. So much for a summer election, right, when considering the rain as it is right now. One thing is for sure, however, is that significant change is about to come. The kind of change, I suppose, that the Labour Party indeed wanted and said would be coming then. We've just made note, of course, of Reform UK as well, and just their impact as well in this election, just how they've taken votes away then perhaps even from the Conservative Party, who've had massive losses throughout. The big question mark then as well, Steve, is just what happens in terms of economic policy. Now, the Labour Party, some analysts, has been far too vanilla in their responses to how exactly they would change things. Yes, they've committed to things like not hiking things like national insurance, VAT as well, and some other taxes. But, however, how do they continue to garner growth? They may get an uptick, though, from the fact that they'll have interest rates continue to head a little bit lower than the Bank of England anticipated, of course, to cut interest rates just next month. But really, where to after that? What exactly is the growth model, and how do you pick things up? They've continued to speak about trying to get closer then, of course, to the EU. And will that be enough then for things like trade? Certainly a lot of changes anticipated here. We're anticipating a lot of speeches as well outside 10 Downing, perhaps a little bit later on, possibly from Sir Keir Starmer as well. So we'll carry all of that for you then across the day.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to cnbc.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabile Kumete, weekdays on CNBC.